Welcome to the Love Your Life and Yourself podcast, the weekly show where science meets soul and mom chaos meets mind mastery. You're not just a mom. You're a woman with dreams, a career, a body that needs care, and a soul that craves more. This podcast is your permission slip to stop surviving and start thriving in motherhood, health, career, and stress resilience. I'm your host, Dr. Ashley Rath, and every week we bring you actionable insights and transformative conversations to help you create a life you truly love. From evidence-based wellness strategies to authentic self-discovery, we'll explore what it takes to thrive through expert interviews and real unfiltered stories. Let's dive into today's episode. Today, I've got Emily Long with me. She's a fitness and mindset coach, creator of the Stronger framework, and founder of the Stronger with Purpose. She helps women both build physical and emotional strength that actually lasts. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Yay. So we met through a mutual friend online. And so I would love to just hear your story. Like, where did you start? Where are you now? Tell me about who you are.
Yeah. So I feel like, and you probably feel the same way, Ashley, that my story, I feel like the older I get, it's like, which road would you like to take? Like, there are just so many options. Also, I think when you're in the entrepreneurial world and we just have done a lot since we started, my husband and I, back when we were like in our 20s. So I'll give you the overview and then you tell me if anything sounds interesting and we want to dive in. But yeah, I mean, basically, I got married really young. My husband and I decided, within the first year of marriage to just go into business together, which, I was 21 when I got married. And, you can imagine like added a level of stress and, we just weren't equipped. We did not have the mindset tools or awareness. There's so much we didn't know that now, in hindsight, I wish I could go back and be like, if you only knew, but then maybe I wouldn't be where I am today. But we dove right in. We built that business. It became the largest group fitness and boot camp in our area and really was very successful. But underneath, we were suffering. We just did not have the capacity to hold boundaries, either with clients or with employees. We had a lot of challenges that popped up that we just weren't equipped for. And while we did muscle through, it was a really stressful period. And so after several years of that, we did end up deciding to sell that business and go online and, kind of skipping parts of the story. But we really felt like a lot of what we did was successful. And so I think we just went into moving online with this attitude of like, oh, it's going to take off, just like all the other things we've done have taken off, and it just didn't. And so you can imagine we had learned some things for sure. We had developed some personal growth along the way, but still, once we launched online, it was really challenging and our marriage suffered. At this point, we had our first son and it was just the whole gamut of mom guilt and work guilt and client guilt. And like, I constantly shoulding on myself. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. When I, was with my son, feeling guilty that I wasn't working. When I was working, feeling guilty that I wasn't with my son. And it just kind of spiraled from there. So, long story short, we just decided to do what most people do. And we started just white knuckling everything. We're like, well, maybe if I can just control it a little bit more, then I will feel better. And we were simultaneously on this personal growth journey. So we were definitely learning tools and things like that, but we were missing a few really key pieces. And that's really where the Stronger framework came out of because, kind of all culminated in one moment when I was in my kitchen and I'm a Christian and I was about to say, I'll be able to trust the Lord when. And it was like, I caught myself being like, oh my gosh, when? Like, I can't surrender. I can't release control until I have controlled the things that I wanted. And it was, again, regardless of anyone's belief or background, we all have a tendency to do that. There are things that we just simply cannot control. And it was the moment of realization that, wow, I am trying to control so many things I have no business of controlling. And that is why I'm stressed. And the next word that I heard in my heart was the word rest. And, I've been like I have worked 3 jobs since I was old enough to work. And I've just always worked 3 or 4 jobs, just nonstop morning till night. And so the word rest was like hilarious. Like, okay, yeah, I'll just, I'll just sit back. It's totally great. It's not like we need money or anything. And I ignored it for a while. And then, through many different things, eventually I started to understand that rest is not the absence of work. it's working with the absence of anxiety and stress and
Mm.
hustle and striving. And once I was able to wrap my head around that, I wouldn't say I was operating in it yet, but once I understood that, it just transformed how I showed up in my life. It actually caused me to take a whole year off of work, and lean in with my kids. I started homeschooling all three boys and, got into sourdough. I mean, and I'm not saying everybody needs to do this, but for me and for the level of like hustle and striving and control that I was at, it was really transformational. And so now that I've kind of re-entered the working world, I've just learned how to do it from a place of rest instead of striving, and a place of surrender and trust, and just focusing on the things that are on my plate, to steward. So that's the high level 30,000 foot view, but that's a
That
big part of.
is incredible. And honestly, it's impeccable. I don't know if you know who Kate Northrup is. She
Yes.
she has a podcast named Plenty. And I was literally listening to it on the way in today. And it talked about resting or
Oh,
slowing down.
wow.
And I have been in this mantra for, I would say, the last year of really putting my brakes on. And it has been incredibly powerful. And it's
Hmm.
wild to think about. You would think that the business would get worse, everything would fall apart, but the opposite has been happening. And
Hmm.
it's it's incredible. So let me ask you this. So you had this moment in the kitchen. You were standing there and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I c- I need to surrender that." So what did that actually look like? Did you like read a book? Did you follow a program? What did that actually look like? Because I think a lot of people are in that where they're
Hmm.
realizing, "Holy crap, I can't sustain this hustle grind mentality forever, but I don't know what to do."
Yeah. Like, how do we take it from up here, what we know we need to do, and actually put
Yeah.
legs to it? Yeah. So I feel like these are those types of questions and answers that are just, they can feel frustrating because they're not black and white. And it's
Mhm.
so different, right, for each of us in the journey that we're on. So at that time, it was not a quick, it wasn't like, okay, rest. And now you need to surrender. And I was just like, okay. In fact, back then, this was a couple years ago, I actually made a reel, and it was like me waiting for everything in my life to change once I've surrendered it. And it was just like, in 30 minutes of deciding that, oh, I'm surrendering all my outcomes. What I have learned is that it is a day to day, moment to moment process.
Mhm.
Even though I am teaching this now and I'm teaching my clients how to do this, I am still constantly having to be like, oops, I'm white knuckling that again. Time to release it again. So the way that I do it is unironically through the Stronger framework. And once I had heard that word rest, the rest of it started to unfold. Like it was truly like I'm like, I don't think I can take any credit for this because of how it came to be. And what I didn't mention is during those years, I also suffered with infertility, recurrent miscarriage. We are
Mm.
foster parents. Like, we have had so many wild rides during those times that were already stressful. And my way of coping back then was to lean into physical strength, because people would say, wow, you're so strong, like mentally, emotionally. That's what they meant. But I knew I was physically strong. I could go and, deadlift a lot of weight. And I used that as another way to control. Like, I can't get my body to get pregnant and to sustain a pregnancy, maybe. I can't force that, but I can force it into submission in the gym. I can force it to hit a New York State record or whatever in the deadlift or whatever I was trying to do. And so I had learned the hard way that while that was really cool and it felt good for a moment, I would compete in a meet and I'd be like, yeah, I hit my goals. It's amazing. And then I would feel so low because
Mm.
nothing really changed internally. And so I had already
Mhm.
been through that. And so when I got to this point of rest, I realized, like, I'm not going to fake it. I'm not going to try to pretend or look strong or find strength in other ways. So what does it look like? Again, I think it's a daily process of recognition. I teach women how to build their backbone, which is ultimately just a connection to self. And I think it starts with that. The more connected we are to ourselves, the more able we are to get in tune with, what am I feeling and what am I experiencing? And like, what is this telling me? Because, I just had a client the other day actually who mentioned, she was feeling really down, and she was kind of like, she had reacted out of it and was kind of beating herself up. And we tend to do that. Like, we'll experience a feeling or an emotion, we'll react to it because we haven't trained ourselves yet to slow down and get curious about it. And then we judge ourselves for our reaction to that emotion or feeling, right? And, I was challenging her to just get curious. Just take a second and say to yourself, like, oh, interesting. I was really edgy. I was really on edge. I wonder why. And then as a result, I was short with my kid. Well, first, I know exactly what I need to do. I can go repair with my kid. Hey, I'm so sorry. It wasn't fair to you that I was, reactive like that. Mommy was feeling a little bit on edge. Right now, I'm just thinking through maybe why. And then the next step is like, ask yourself, like, what's actually going on here? What's underneath it? I think this is where it's not black and white, because sometimes you'll be like, oh, I know exactly what it is. It's because of XYZ. It could be something as simple as I just haven't been sleeping enough. Or it could be there's actually this really stressful thing happening at work and I'm carrying that in my personal time. I mean, it could be I was triggered by some deep core wound that occurred in my childhood, right? Like, it's this wide range of things that it could possibly be. But by getting curious, it's actually a way to rebuild self-trust, because it's like your body's giving you the signs, right? I'm not okay. And when you stop and you go, hey, what's going on? Even if you don't discover that answer, you're teaching yourself on a subconscious level that this matters and it's important. And you'll begin to trust yourself the more you move forward. So it was like 1,000 tiny moments like that. Like, oh, I feel really on edge, especially when I was trying to rest. I feel like I should be doing something. Oh, okay, interesting. Instead of judging myself for it, what is this? I wonder where this is coming from. Wow, I didn't realize how performance driven I was. I didn't realize that I actually get anxiety when I try to just be. And just learning how to be, not be peaceful, not be confident, not be certain, not be, totally clear on everything you're trying to do, but literally just be with yourself as you are, I think is one of the first steps. Just getting curious. And I could go off forever on that.
No, I think that's fascinating, and it really aligns with my work and what I do. And I love the word curiosity because, from a neuro standpoint, to be curious, you actually have to be firing in that prefrontal cortex, which is the opposite of a stress state. It's the parasympathetic state. So you're not in this survival mode. And I think that's where many of us women like to live in that like sympathetic overdrive, the stress response, the go, 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 the hustle, hustle, hustle. And so what I've noticed personally is when I slow down, I can actually get curious. It's in the hustling, it's in the hurrying, it's in the do more checklist perfectionism that you can't even fathom curiosity in that, because you're literally not wiring neurologically for your brain to function that way. And so I think it's really curious, or I think it's really fascinating that he used the word curious in it, because it opens up the whole world of, oh, it's like the wonder. It's yeah.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And I'm so glad you said this. And I'm sure you talk about this a lot. But what I was doing, and I didn't realize I was even doing it, is when I would experience like that, like, rah, whatever it was, whether I was just on edge or I was annoyed and I'm yelling at my kids or what, just showing up how I do not want to be, I would usually go, I'd be like, I just need a minute. And I'd get in my room. And what I was doing is I was grounding, right? I
mhm.
was sending myself back so that I could actually think. I didn't realize at the time that that's what I was doing, but I'm glad you pointed that out, because I think when you're in that moment, like you said, you just simply cannot get curious until you can take a second. And that, could look like so many things. It could look like getting outside for a second. Walks are life to me right now.
Mhm.
Whatever that looks like, just going sometimes, again, I homeschool my kids. I work from home. They're with me all the time. I have 3 boys. They're 3 boys. And I need a lot of breaks. And I'm like kind of like a introvert, I recharge alone. So I will often be like, I need 5 minutes so that I can be a good mom. And I will go into my room and I'll breathe. Sometimes I'll just lay there. But yes, that's so, so important to mention that don't judge yourself for not having been able to do that. You may have just not known how or had the tools to do that. So just give yourself a second to ground and then get curious.
I think that's super powerful. And knowing that 5 minutes can do so much. Like we
Mhm.
don't need 60. I mean, sometimes we do need 60 minutes,
Sure.
but there's many times where we really just need that 5 minutes. Like I am very auditorily I would guess you could say sensory, where like in a big gathering or a social setting, I find myself, or even just like around people that I love, like my immediate family, if the
Mhm.
kids are just, they're not even fighting, they're just being loud for an extended period of time. I'm like, whew, okay, I gotta take 5 minutes because otherwise I'm gonna get real snappy with y'all.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's super powerful to realize like, okay, I'm teaching myself while teaching my kids that the 5-minute break is okay. And
Mhm.
if you need an alone time, or, some people are the opposite where they need to go socialize a little bit,
Mhm.
but that's okay. And that regulation of you taking 5 minutes is actually teaching your boys, hey, this is how we regulate. Sometimes we just need a break. And I think we use our kids as an excuse, but we can also use us regulating ourselves as a teachable moment as a parent too.
Yeah.
But
I love that you saw that. Real quick, I'll just say, because I have done that where I'm like, if they would just not be like this, I would definitely be like, oh, I could be so much calmer if they weren't the way they were.
mhm.
But I've started referring to them as, not them, but like the situations as opportunities. Like, oh, here's an opportunity to really like grow in this way. Here's an opportunity to practice demonstrating self-control or whatever it is. That has helped me.
I love that. I'm gonna start using that. I have 2 boys. I don't know if you can see on camera, but I
Oh
got a
no.
goose egg from one of them.
Oh,
This weekend we were sitting in the lake and, they were just, like, throwing rocks. They're younger, so
yeah.
this one particularly is only 5 at the moment, and he was chucking rocks in the lake, and I was sitting in a lawn chair just like,
Oh, no.
and it came out of his hand, and I'm not kidding you, I had a goose egg, like, an
Oh
inch
my
sticking out, and so
gosh.
when you talk about boys and the chaos,
You
I'm like,
know it.
"Yep, I
Yeah.
can totally relate." I just got smoked with a rock with a huge goose egg on my forehead
Oh
this
my
this
gosh.
weekend, but, taking that as an opportunity
It's an
to teach,
opportunity. Yes.
even in the midst of, "What the heck just happened?"
Literally,
So,
why are we throwing rocks? Yes. But
yes.
yep.
Anyway, okay, so I wanna go through the stronger framework just breakdown, letter by letter because it is an acronym from what I have learned
Yep.
anyway. So talk to me about what the stronger framework is.
Yeah, sure. I'll go over each letter pretty quickly and just give a short description. But so it starts with S, which stands for the word surrender. We've talked about this. So it's really just about surrendering all the things that you couldn't control anyway. We would be amazed. I mean, from parenting to marriage to relationships to friendships to volunteer opportunities to work, all the things that we are trying to control that we can't, no matter what. And really, like when you really think about what can I actually control? It's like my thoughts, my words, and my actions. And of course, like those you could deep dive into each of those, your thoughts, like you can work through your core wounds and all those things. But there's actually not that much that we can control. And yet we act like we can control our children's behavior or we can control what happens at work or outcomes. So surrender is all about opening up your hand. And I like to think about pursuing everything in my life now with an open hand. Like I'm just like, here it is. And if it's taken, that's okay. I'm going to be okay. And if it's added, that's okay. I'm going to be okay. So that's what surrender means. And that's what it looks like. And again, this is a moment to moment process because there are times where I'm like, yes, I've surrendered that. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I feel so anxious about this. And that's a trigger. It's a warning that's telling you, you're probably not surrendering it. You're probably trying to hold on to something again that you have no business trying to control. So that leads us to the T, which is a two-parter. So it's trust. So when you surrender, you have to trust that it's going to work out the way it's meant to work out. Like you just have to. You can't just surrender and then like stare at it the whole time because you're not surrendering it. It has to go hand in hand with surrender and trust. But the second part of that, and this is the part that people like me and probably you, I don't know, like those of us who are doers love is be trustworthy. So the
Mm,
trustworthiness part is, okay, now that I've surrendered everything about this that I can't control, what about it can I control? Like, what about it is on my plate? And it may be just how I think about it, how I stew over it. It may just be the emotions I'm experiencing over it. It could be that, or it could be literally like, work. I can't control the outcomes. I can't make people sign up for my program, but I can show up and add a lot of value. I can create good content, right? Like you only focus on the things you can actually do and measure. So, it has to be black and white in this part. So that's the be trustworthy. I also like to think of it as like being a good steward. So again, with my kids, I cannot control their behavior. I can't control what they do or how they turn out. But if I'm stewarding them well in this moment, I can take these moments as opportunities and be like, oh, there's some more discipling that needs to happen here. Or we've got like, oh, there's like a little heart issue going on. How can I coach him in this way? Those are the things that are on my plate to steward. So that's the T. And then that leads us to the R, which stands for rest. And what I love about, I'm like, how is this so perfect? Because you cannot rest until you have first surrendered and you're trusting and you're being trustworthy with what's on your plate. Because I think, especially coming from a faith background, there is like this misconception that like, I'm just surrendering it and I'm good. And we forget that there is also an action piece. And I think this happens in all areas. It doesn't have to just be a faith community where we're like, once I let it go, I'm just forgetting about it. And it's not the way. We let go of the parts we can't control, but we still take ownership of the things that are still in our hands. And then we can rest because then we're working from a place of intention, a place of clarity, a place of like doing only what we can actually do and not trying to control what we can't control. So the STR, I tell people all the time, like, if you stop, if that's all you ever take away, that'll change your life. Because the second you feel anxious, you're not able to work from rest. And you can say to yourself, what am I taking back? What am I worrying about? What am I thinking about that I cannot control? And then you separate that. Okay, I need to surrender that. And then what about it can I control? What can I do? And then it puts the power back in your hands of what you can actually do. And then you can actually rest. Then you can breathe. Then you can focus. And you mentioned that it amazed you how much your business is still doing so well, probably because you're focusing on the things that matter, right? And not on all the other little things that we get caught up in. So then that takes us to O, which stands for observant. And this is a two-parter as well. One, again, because I come from a faith background, it's very much like for me listening to the voice of God. So like I'm always listening to that, just that still small voice. And then the other part is being self-aware. So like observant as in willing to look in the mirror and see yourself rightly. And again, each one of these letters we could unpack for like 3 hours, but I'll give you the overview. For the O, the important part of being self-aware is it is more culturally acceptable to look at our faults and kind of like, self-deprecate a little bit. But the key here is it's not just looking at the areas of growth and the areas of need, but it's also seeing yourself rightly in that like, wow, this is a strength. Like this is actually something I'm really good at, and being able to own those things in an honest way. So it's actually humble. It's not arrogant. You're just able to recognize your strengths. And there's a verse in Romans 12, I think it's Romans 12:2 or 12:3, and it talks about like, look at yourself with a sober mind. And that means, it says, don't think of yourself as too highly, but look at yourself with a sober mind. And it literally means to look at yourself rightly, not too highly, but also not too lowly. And I think we tend to look at ourselves and we're like, I'm not good at this. I'm not good at that. And that's the cultural acceptable way to see yourself, right? It's actually like odd for someone to walk with strength and be like, yeah, actually, I'm really good at that. We can be like, oh, like she's so full of herself. No, she just knows who she is, right? We all have strengths.
Absolutely.
We all have weaknesses. So that's the key with O. And I think it's hard to do that until we do have that, like we talked about before, that connection to self and that strong backbone. So STRO. So that leads us to N, which stands for nourished. And this is nourished mind, body, and soul. So obviously your physical body, what are you fueling yourself with, is going to determine how you think, how you show up, how you feel, how you sleep. But also your mind. What are you nourishing your mind with? What are you numbing out with? What are you filling your head with? What podcast do you listen to? You should be listening to Dr. Ashley Rath's podcast. What, TV shows, all of those things, the people we hang around. And then spirit, like, what are you nourishing your spirit with? Like, are you taking the time to like call those negative thoughts to mind and force them to be accountable? Like we were talking about before, are you slowing down and going like, what does this mean? So that's all part of nourished. G stands for gratitude, or grateful. And, we all know what that means, but I will tell you that gratitude on the other side of the STRON is different. Because when you are experiencing gratitude after you have fully surrendered, you're in action over the things you can be in action. You're recognizing your strengths for what they are. You're noticing your weaknesses and you're working toward, it is so different than when you're just like, I'm trying to think of 3 things I'm thankful for today, which is a great start. but it's
Mm-hmm.
deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And then that leads us to the E, which stands for energized. So again, when you have done all of this and you've freed yourself of the burden of all the things you can't control, you'll just operate in life with energy. And then of course, as you're nourishing yourself with things that actually add value to your mind, body, and spirit. And then that ends with resolved or resilient. And that's just because we're going to mess it up and we're going to fall on our face and things are going to happen outside of ourselves that are going to cause us to trip up. And it's just the determination to continue to stay connected to yourself, to get your feet back under you and to continue moving forward, surrendered, trusting, and from a place of rest. So that's like the 30,000 foot view of the stronger framework.
It's so powerful. And how cool is it that it spells stronger? I mean, I'm just in awe of this. I'm like, literally everything that like we talk about is in this, and
I
it's
know. And it's like the
it's so
word, like
cool.
I got the nickname years ago at a kettlebell conference or certification. I mean, Emily Longstrong. And it's like been my nickname ever since. And I've really held on to it. And I'm like, how, like this has to be straight from God. There's no way I came up with this on my own, but thank you for appreciating it too.
Yeah, I'm like just in awe of that. Yeah, it's everything that I talk about in
Oh,
I
wow.
think in the world that we're in of health and wellness.
Mm.
We realize that it's so much more than just nutrition and working
Oh,
out.
yeah.
And I love how that is just all encompassing. So I have a question to follow up with that framework. You obviously coach the framework and you have lots of clients. I'm guessing more women, but I guess I shouldn't assume
All
that.
women. Yeah.
Okay, all
Mhm.
women. So why do you think women, like from my perspective, I feel like it's this all or nothing perspective that we get in it. They're like they look at they may probably read the stronger framework and they're like, "Oh, I'm good at that. I could do that. I could do that, but I can't do that. So I'm just not even going to start."
Mm.
Or I think this perfectionism, and maybe it's due to social media, of seeing these curated posts all the time. But why do you think so many women fall into this trap?
Oh man, that is a topic we talk about a lot. And all my clients struggle with it. And I did for years and years and years. Um, why I think they struggle with it, I think is multifaceted. I think it is so many cultural expectations. I think it is the mixed messaging. I mean, this is just one facet of it, but it's a privilege. Aging is a privilege and you should love yourself at every stage, but also here's 50% off all of these, things you can do to your face or whatever. And like, no, I'm not shaming anybody who gets those things done, but we have these those are opposing messages and we're getting them out of the same mouths. And I think that's a huge part of it is just there's so much confusion in the fitness world, in the aging world, in the working woman world, in the stay-at-home mom world. Like the messaging is so confusing. Stand, with boldness and confidence, but don't be too much. Those are two messages we are getting always at the same time. And I think the confusion doesn't help. However, and then I also think you have things like diet culture and, like stuff like this that we have been programmed with. And while fitness is a part of what I do because, being stronger, you have to have a healthy body. You don't have to have a size 2 body, but you do have to be doing things that are nourishing your body in order to feel great, right? Um, and so a lot of times women, they'll want to start with that, but they just zoom right back into when it felt like a part-time job, when it was like, you're either doing it or you're not. And I think a lot of times the reasons that we're doing things drive that all or nothing behavior because either, well, here's really what it comes down to. Because the goals tend to be things that should be surrendered. For example, if we're talking about fitness, the goal is weight loss. I'm trying to lose 50 pounds. Well, you actually can't unless you cut off an arm or a leg. That's one way you could do it. You could just drop 50 pounds probably like that. But unless you do something like that, you actually can't make yourself lose weight. You can't stand on a scale and will it to go down. All you can do, so you have to surrender that, right? And you have to trust that your body is going to do what it was designed to do. All you can do is nourish your body, move your body, think kindly and lovingly about, like, those are the only things you can do. You can't force those to create the outcome that you want. Now, we do know that, yes, the healthier that we eat and, the more nourished we are, the more we move, tends to result in a lower scale. But I think a lot of times when we get so wrapped up in those end results that we can't control, that's what makes us fall into those all or nothing mindsets. So when we can shift our mindset to, like, I move my body because I feel amazing when I do. I nourish my body because I have more energy when I do, and because I love myself. And the same way that I want to do good for my kids, I want to do good for myself. So, again, so multifaceted, but I think it really does boil down to when we get connected to ourselves again and we build that self-trust and that self-compassion, we actually start to treat ourselves like someone we love, because we do. And we no longer, the more in touch we are with ourselves, then less we have to do behaviors that are more like avoidant or numbing out, like binge eating at night or, watching Netflix all night or, things like that we tend to fall into when we don't know how to manage some of those emotions. But, from like a very practical standpoint, I always teach my clients, what is the next right thing? What's the next one? You can't control what you do a week from now, but like, what's one thing you can do right now that'll just add energy to your life? And then the last piece I'll mention on that a lot of people miss is they don't take the time. They know what they want, or they think they know what they want, weight loss or whatever. I can always get them to realize that that's actually not what you want. You want to have energy to play with your kids, and that strict diet is going to make you feel like garbage, and you're probably not going to have any energy. And then when you gain the weight back, you're going to feel even worse. But what they really want is to have a better quality of life. That's what it always boils down to when we dig into it. But then when we ask why, I mean, but especially when we had the gym, I would sit down for these appointments with people and they would end up in tears and I would end up in tears because I'd be digging with them to figure out what their real why was. Once you uncover what the reason is that you want to achieve these goals, it is so much easier to apply something like the Stronger framework because it comes down to a heart level. It's like, it's just so much deeper than I want to lose 20 pounds for my vacation, and it makes it more, you're more willing to make the small, seemingly insignificant changes and repeat them over time. To get those results.
There were so many nuggets in there. So many nuggets. When I look at, okay, so that's kind of all or nothing mentality. And then to me, one of the challenging things from a health and wellness standpoint is the consistency factor. So what do you feel like is the mindset that actually starts to get people to stay consistent? Or is it that why? Is it the reminder of, well, this is my deeper why?
I do. I think it's the why, and I think it's the connection to self. And that's the biggest thing I've noticed with the clients that I work with. And like, if you've ever worked with somebody who's experienced trauma of some sort, and I'm not even necessarily talking about capital T trauma, like it could be, any level of like traumas that have happened from their childhood or whatever. When you are working with somebody like that, what are you focusing on? Like the most basic things, right? Are you sleeping? Yeah. Are you fueling your body? Like, are you drinking enough water? Like it's the very foundational basic things. And I think when somebody's going through something traumatic or even just like really, really upsetting, it kind of like filters away all of that extra stuff that we tend to get caught up in our day-to-day lives. And it brings you back to the most foundational things. And it also like, it can shake people so much to their core and make them doubt and question who they are, that they have to kind of start at the beginning to rebuild that connection to self. And I say that to say that, how do we walk with someone through that? Well, you start by getting curious about what you're experiencing. You start by rebuilding trust by saying, hey, self, like, it's okay that you're not okay today. What are we feeling? What's underneath this? I feel sad. Well, what else could that mean? Or what is that coming from? Where do I feel this in my body? It's literally just, it's almost like this coming home. And while I would never wish trauma or anything like that on anybody, it does create, here's that word again, a unique opportunity to get connected to yourself in a way that, because you almost have to for survival, but in a way that if everything's just okay, we don't often have to do. And so that's sort of like what I'm trying to walk my clients through, whether they're in that state or not, is like, how do we go back? Yes, I know things are like okay and they're fine, but if you don't feel a level of confidence, if you don't feel a level of clarity and certainty in your life, like then there's a disconnection with you knowing who you are and like having love and respect for that person. And I think when we break it all down and we get back to that, there's just this like new drive, because rather than going and beating yourself up at the gym because you have to have a six pack, you're moving your body from a place of self-love and nourishment. So I think the why, and I think connection to self at a very core, like heart level, is key for that.
Mm, that's powerful.
Mm.
I think the why, and I do the same thing with my clients. We dig deep, and we're both crying, and we always have a tissue box in the
Yeah.
office. And I think you're absolutely right. Like, don't we all just want to like be able to hang out with our kids and feel energized
Mhm.
and not fatigued, and have this vital like light shining
Yeah.
through us? And um yeah, I love it. So, let me ask you this, like, what's your rookie mistake that, you had to keep learning before you learned it, when it came to, maybe it was in business, maybe it was in health and wellness, but what do you feel like, or maybe that was the story you told at the beginning of, white knuckling, but what do you feel like was something that maybe took 1 or 2 lessons to learn and not just the first time?
Um, you know, I'm hesitating only because there's so many. There's so many. I was like, which one does your audience need to hear most? I mean, all or nothing is when I learned.
Mm.
I mean, from when I was a kid, like I really was like, if I can't do it all, I wouldn't do it at all. I do think you know what I will say? I will say probably the lesson, I don't know that I would even call it a rookie mistake, but I do think that we all have to go through this. And this is something I wish I was aware of before I went through it. I learned it after. Is something called the pride cycle. And it's just like, and this actually goes back to the and stronger. Because if I had the tools to look at myself rightly during different seasons, I probably could have seen this. Like now I hope and pray that I would notice this moving forward and have like a humbleness to actually be like, oh, I'm sensing this in myself. But it's kind of like, when you get to like the peak and you're like, oh, I'm crushing it and I'm living my life. And you're not like, I don't think I was arrogant, or I wasn't trying to be. I wasn't like trying to think of myself as higher than anyone else, but I really was like, yeah, we got this. This is great. And the pride cycle is when you're forced to have to like, kind of sink back down to the bottom of the barrel, and then you rebuild on the other side. But you do it with a level. I mean, I guess we have a choice. We can either dig our heels in and do it with more arrogance and then end up cycling through it again and again, or you can trudge through the mud slowly and learn the hard lessons and allow yourself to be broken down and humbled and rebuild slowly and intentionally. And that is definitely a journey that my husband and I have walked. And I would say, while it was the most painful season of our life because, things were tough financially. And, like I said, we had the fertility struggles going on. I mean, there's just so much going on, so much stress. It also like created a level of softness and empathy in us that we would not have achieved otherwise. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's probably the most powerful lesson that we've walked through, is just like I'll never, I don't want to feel like I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop. So we're not going to do that either. But I'm never going to just assume that everything's going to be great forever. Like I'm always going to just live in gratitude for what we have, and just carry it with an open hand and know that we're going to be okay. And again, that goes back to being connected to self, because I think without that, your external circumstances dictate how you feel. So I really think that largely came through having to walk through the painful pride cycle of life.
Mm. Mhm. If you don't mind, and we can totally edit this out if you don't want to talk about it, but uh, I would love to hear your story about infertility. And you ended up having babies of your own, not?
Yeah, and just so you know, I'm an open book. There's like
Okay.
very few, like maybe if I accidentally like tooted or something, I'd have you edit that. I don't know. Actually, maybe I'd be like, you know what, everybody does it. Keep it in. But no, I am totally fine talking about it. So yeah, I'll just share the overview. You let me know if you've got specific questions. But we had our first son. My oldest son is our biological child. He is going to be 14, and no issues. Got pregnant quickly, like super easy pregnancy. And then there were some complications at the end, where like he was sensitized, like my blood crossed over in his and it was attacking him. He ended up needing a double exchange blood transfusion right after he was born. But after that was over, he was totally fine and healthy, which was great. And so about a year and a half later, we started trying again. And that's just kind of when, I got pregnant very quickly, but I ended up unfortunately having 6 miscarriages.
Oh my
Yes.
word.
And
I'm
it was
so sorry.
heartbreaking. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I talk about this because there are so many women I have
Mhm.
learned. And at the time that this was happening to me, no one was talking about it. And when I would share it, like in church groups or whatever, I would be met with, well, like maybe it's because you're too thin, or maybe you work out too much, or, and it was literally like, I already am blaming myself. I already feel like this is my fault. And then people would tell me things like that. And it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking.
Mm.
And so I stopped talking about it for a while. And then, actually it was, I think it was the fourth miscarriage. And I was out of town on a business trip and ended up in the emergency room there. And, on the flight home, I'm just crying. And I heard very clearly in my heart, this is meant to be part of your story. You need to share it. And so when I got home, I started sharing it. And it's been like, it's just been wild how, I've been able to connect with so many women and encourage them along their journey. So that was, again, a long season. And then we entered into the world of foster care. So my 2 youngest boys, are actually adopted through foster care. And
Oh,
they came to us when they were 2 weeks old and 16 months.
oh my goodness.
And my middle son just turned 9. So it's been many, many years. But, so there's, a lot of redemption in that story, but it was definitely a difficult season. We never found out why. There was never any answers. No one could figure out what was going on. And so, I like to talk about that as like, there are just unanswered prayers in our life. And I can't tell you why, aside from, when we choose to look for meaning in it. I don't think that God caused those things to happen, but I do think that he can use those things. And in my life, I will tell you that the most of the empathy and the compassion that I have has come through that journey because, I would be in the checkout line at the grocery store with tears like silently streaming down my cheeks and like literally in the middle, of a miscarriage, and no one could tell. And I just
Yeah.
remember thinking, like, you have no idea, like my heart is broken. And if someone would like be kind of short with me or just not kind, like I was so sensitive to that because I'm just like, if you only knew, like, wouldn't you just want to make me smile if you knew? And so it's turned me into the kind of person that always is trying to like connect with strangers or smile at them or just say a kind word. I'm a big believer in like, if you think it, say it. Like if you think something nice, say it. Because life is short and you have no idea how even complimenting someone's shirt could, they might need exactly that in exactly that moment. So,
Mm. Yeah. I can relate. I haven't had 6, but we had 1 and I had
oh,
that baby at 19 weeks. It was pretty terrible. And so it's heartbreaking and it's also in my book I have a chapter that talks about how shitty things happens to good people and we don't know
mhm.
why all the time.
Yeah.
And we may never know why. Most of the time, we don't know why. And how to take those crappy things and turn them into lessons
Mhm.
and not necessarily wins, but how can we learn and grow from them? Because they're
Yes.
still crappy, like they still suck.
Yeah.
Um, but really, how can we learn and grow from them? And that's powerful. And I feel like we're so aligned. I write for just our local newspaper, and the story this week was all about curiosity
Oh, wow.
and how we can because everyone has a story. Everyone has their burdens that they're carrying. And if we can stop and get curious, it goes back to our word, curiosity at the beginning.
Mhm.
But if we can stop and just get curious instead of judging, how
Mhm.
much more connected we'd be as a
Oh,
society, regardless of what your beliefs or morals or religions or political views are.
mhm.
I think the majority of the people, we want the same things. We
Yeah.
want happiness, we want joy, we want love, we want wellness and health. And so we may not get there the same way, which is okay, but everyone's story is different. So we shouldn't get there the same way.
Yeah.
And I think that's super powerful. And when we share the stories and vulnerability, like you just have, I think that connection is instantaneous because you realize, wow, she's not she's not perfect. We're not perfect. I'm not perfect. Like, we all have our imperfections, which makes us this beautiful, connected community.
Oh, I couldn't
So,
agree more. I could not agree more. I feel like, um, yeah, I probably to a fault, although I don't know, maybe it's not a fault, like overshare because
mm,
it is like one of the it would make me so sad and heartbroken if somebody looked at me and thought I was perfect because I am so not. So I am always trying to vulnerably share, like, no, actually, I just screamed at my kids today. So, I'm trying not to. I'm working on it, but like, I am so far from perfect. Please do not put me on a pedestal. I don't belong there. And I have learned to do the same. But no, I couldn't agree more. Just by sharing openly, and I do think there are times to keep your story to a smaller group of people. We have to be careful, with who
mhm.
we share certain things with for sure. But I agree. It connects us. And like you said, no matter what your background, like that is exactly the world that we want, right? Like when you connect one-on-one and heart to heart, it's amazing how much more in common I think we all have than we even realize.
So true. All right. Emily, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to ask you, where do we find you? This framework is amazing. What do you have going on? Do you have any events or launches or uh, coaching stuff that we should know about? What do you
Yeah,
have
thank
going
you
on?
so much. I appreciate you asking that. So right now, I'm most active on Instagram, which is my account right now is emilylong.strong on Instagram. And then I do have a waitlist page right now. So if anybody is like, I want to get on your list and just see what you have going on, I don't have any launches coming up right now, but I will in the very near future. I have a new course coming out called Build Your Backbone. And it's literally all about this. It's like about getting connected again with yourself and walking through the stronger framework on a very like core level. But you could just go to strongerwithpurpose.life and you'll be able to just add your name to the waitlist there. And you'll get all that info. But yeah, I would love to connect.
Love it. And to end the Love Your Life and Yourself podcast, what is one piece of advice or two that you would give our listeners to love their lives and themselves more fully?
I would say I'm just going to go ahead and summarize what we've already talked about, Ashley, and that you can love yourself by slowing down, getting connected with yourself, and being curious instead of judgmental. In fact, the word that I use with my kids, because I love these little catchy phrases, because if I can just recall this in my head when I'm angry, it'll slow me down and help me get grounded. But I love the phrase curious, not furious.
Mm,
And I think we can get that with ourselves, right? Like if you do something, you're like, oh, you're so stupid. Why would you do that? Oh, stop yourself and go, hold on a second. Curious, not furious. Why did I react that way? Why did I say those words? Why did I condescend my child? We've all been there. And then slow it down. And then, and this goes back to the all or nothing thing, then ask yourself, what's the next right thing? So let me surrender what I can't control, trust that everything's going to work out the way it's supposed to. And now what's in my hand to steward? What's the next right thing to do? Maybe it's repair whatever, the rupture with your child. If you yelled at them, maybe it's repair with yourself, whatever that looks like. But that's my advice is connect and be curious.
furious, not curious. I mean, curious, not
Yeah.
furious.
Sometimes I can't lie. Sometimes I'm like, nope, it's furious, not curious today. It happens.
Oh, goodness. Thank you
I
so much,
love it.
Emily. I really appreciate your time and your knowledge and expertise and just wisdom that you have. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. You're amazing. And thank you for having me, Ashley.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in to Love Your Life and Yourself. I hope today's episode gave you one more tool or one more truth to help you thrive in your health, happiness, and resilience. Remember, loving yourself isn't selfish, it's leadership. And it's the foundation for building a life that actually feels like yours. If this spoke to you, hit that follow button, leave a review, and send it to a friend who needs to hear it. And if you want to dive even deeper, grab a copy of my #1 best-selling book, Love Your Life and Yourself. It's the heart behind this podcast, and it's helped thousands of women step into a life they actually love. You can find it at drashleyrath.com or through the link in the show notes. Until next time, take care of you and keep choosing to love your life and yourself.